My name is Alex, and this happened about 7 years ago, back when I was in my early 20s, trying to save up some money for college. I was working a graveyard shift at an old 24-hour diner on the outskirts of my small hometown. It wasn't exactly my dream job, but it paid the bills, and with my parents constantly on my case about my future, I really couldn't afford to be unemployed. It was one of those places that felt like it had been frozen in time, probably hadn't changed much since the 1970s. The vinyl booths were cracked, the counter was perpetually sticky no matter how many times you wiped it down, and the coffee maker gurgled and hissed like a dying beast. The food wasn't anything to write home about either. Greasy spoons, lukewarm fries, and coffee that tasted like burnt ambition. Honestly, I don't know why anyone came there, especially in the dead of night. The saving grace of working at the diner was that, because it was so isolated and the food was so forgettable, most of my shifts were incredibly slow, especially the overnight ones. Mostly it involved wiping down counters, refilling sugar dispensers, and trying to stay awake while listening to the hum of the refrigerator. One particularly uneventful Tuesday night, I was just about to close out the register for an hour-long break, which was allowed during the deadest hours, when the old bell above the door jingled, announcing a new customer. I looked up, a little surprised, as it was well past 2 in the morning. A man stepped inside, and I remember him distinctly because he was odd. He was tall and gaunt, dressed in a long dark trench coat despite the warm summer night. His face was shadowed by the brim of a wide-brimmed hat, and he carried an old battered briefcase clutched tightly in one hand. He walked with a peculiar shuffling gait, almost as if he was struggling to lift his feet. He didn't make eye contact, just shuffled over to the furthest booth in the corner, the one tucked away behind the jukebox, and sat down. "What can I get for you?" I asked, walking over to his table with my order pad, trying to sound as awake as possible. He didn't speak. He just slowly, deliberately, slid the briefcase across the table towards me. I hesitated, then looked at him, confused. The briefcase was old leather, scuffed and worn, and it had a strange, almost sickly sweet odor clinging to it, like old flowers and something else, something metallic. "Sir, I need your order," I repeated, a little more firmly, glancing at the briefcase. He still didn't speak. Instead, he reached a skeletal hand out, covered by a frayed glove, and gently pushed the briefcase closer to me. My heart started to beat a little faster. This was weird, really weird. I'd dealt with drunk customers, angry customers, even customers who tried to pay with foreign currency, but never someone who tried to order with a briefcase. "Is this money?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I peered closer, and through a small gap in the worn leather, I could see a flash of green, a lot of green, $100 bills, stacked high. He nodded once, a slow, almost imperceptible movement of his head. Then, with a raspy, dry voice, he spoke. His voice was like dry leaves rustling on concrete. "The usual." "The usual?" I repeated, bewildered. I had never seen this man before in my life. "What's the usual, sir?" He pointed a long, bony finger at the menu, but not at any of the items. He pointed at the blank space in the middle of the laminated page, between the all-day breakfast and the sandwiches. It was completely empty. A chill ran down my spine. Despite the stale, humid air of the diner, this was no ordinary customer. My mind raced, trying to find a rational explanation. Maybe he was testing me, a secret shopper, or maybe he had some kind of medical condition that prevented him from speaking clearly. But the money, the strange request, the overall unsettling aura about him, it didn't add up. I looked at the briefcase, then back at him. His eyes, though shadowed by the hat, felt like they were piercing through me. I swallowed hard. "Sir, I don't understand." He let out a low guttural sigh, a sound that seemed to come from deep within his chest, and then he spoke again, his voice a little stronger, more urgent this time, the special for the quiet ones. You know, my blood ran cold. The quiet ones? What in the world was he talking about? There was no such special on the menu. There was no such concept, period. My instinct screamed at me to run, to call my manager, to do anything but stand there. But I was frozen. A part of me, the part that was curious and a little stupid, wanted to know what he meant. And the money, a lot of money. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing pulse. Sir, I really don't know what you mean. We don't have anything called the special for the quiet ones. He leaned forward slightly, and I could finally see his eyes. They were wide, bloodshot, and seemed to hold an ancient weariness. It's always available, for those who know how to ask. He pushed the briefcase even closer, and I could feel the cold weight of it on the table. Just bring it, and take your payment. My hand twitched, wanting to grab the briefcase. But something held me back. The fear was starting to override the temptation of the money. I suddenly remembered my manager's words from my first day. If anything feels off, anything at all, you call me immediately. Don't be a hero. I glanced at the old rotary phone behind the counter, my escape route. I'm sorry, sir. I managed to stammer, my voice shaking slightly. I don't know what you're asking for. His eyes narrowed, and a faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through his body. The sickly sweet smell seemed to intensify, and for a moment I felt lightheaded. He then did something that made every hair on my arm stand up. He slowly, deliberately, reached into the briefcase and pulled out nothing. His hand was empty, but then, as he brought his hand out, I saw it, a faint, almost transparent shimmering, like heat haze, outlined against his palm. It was thin, almost like a piece of paper, but it pulsed faintly, with a dull reddish glow. It wasn't paper, it was something else. It looked like a membrane. He held it out towards me. This is a part of the payment. Proof of authenticity. The rest is in the briefcase. I flinched back, my eyes wide, my breath caught in my throat. This was no ordinary customer. This was something out of a nightmare. The strange, shimmering membrane, the vast sums of money, the bizarre request. My mind screamed at me. Run, now. I turned and bolted. I didn't say another word, didn't even look back. I ran behind the counter, my hands fumbling for the phone. I didn't care about the money, about my job, about anything. All I wanted was to get out of there. My heart was pounding in my ears, and I could feel the cold sweat running down my back. I snatched up the receiver and started dialing my manager's number, my fingers clumsy with panic. As I was dialing, I heard a soft scraping sound from the booth. I risked a quick glance. The man was still sitting there, motionless, his hat still shadowing his face. But the briefcase was open, and I could see more of those shimmering membranes, stacked neatly inside. And then I saw something else, something small and dark, curled up in the corner of the briefcase, almost hidden by the money and the strange objects. It looked like a shriveled, unsettling artifact, a small twisted relic. A silent scream tore through me. My stomach lurched, and I barely managed to suppress the urge to vomit. I slammed the phone down, grabbed my keys, and without even thinking about locking up, I sprinted out the back door of the diner. I didn't stop running until I reached my beat-up old car, which was parked behind the dumpster. My hands were shaking so violently, I could barely get the key in the ignition. I peeled out of the parking lot, leaving the diner and that terrifying man behind. I drove for what felt like an eternity, constantly checking my rearview mirror, convinced he was somehow following me. The image of that twisted relic, those shimmering membranes, was burned into my mind. I eventually pulled over on the side of a deserted road, gasping for breath, my whole body trembling. I called my manager, practically incoherent, trying to explain what had happened. He was half asleep and clearly annoyed at being woken up, but the sheer terror in my voice must have gotten through to him. He told me to go home, lock my doors, and he'd handle it. He said he'd call me back in an hour or so after he'd gone to the diner. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my living room, the lights on, staring at the walls, replaying the scene over and over in my head. What was that man? What was he trying to order? What were those things in his briefcase? The special for the quiet ones, the twisted relic. Around 5 in the morning, my phone rang. It was my manager. His voice was grim, devoid of any annoyance. "Alex," he said, "I need you to listen very carefully. You're not coming back to work ever." "What? Why?" I stammered, my heart leaping into my throat. "Did you see him? Was he still there?" "Alex, the diner, it's gone," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" I was utterly confused. It's just not there. The building, the sign, everything. It's just an empty lot where it used to be, like it was never there." My mind reeled. This couldn't be happening. I knew that diner. I'd worked there for months. I drove past it every day. It was a solid brick building. "That's impossible," I said, my voice hoarse. "I was just there. I ran out of there." "I know," he said, "and I don't know what to tell you. I've called the police. They think I'm crazy. They say there's never been a diner on that property, just an empty lot for decades." We talked for a long time, both of us trying to make sense of the inexplicable. He admitted he'd driven out there, expecting to find the diner, maybe a broken window or the strange man still sitting there. But there was nothing, just overgrown weeds and a patch of empty asphalt where the parking lot used to be. The police investigation went nowhere, as expected. They dismissed my manager's claims as a delusion and mine as a desperate attempt to avoid working. I tried to explain what I saw, what I felt, but how do you explain a diner that vanishes, or a man who tries to pay for an invisible meal with strange objects and shimmering membranes? To this day, I still drive past that empty lot occasionally. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still see a faint, almost ghostly flicker of a neon sign in the distance. And sometimes, when the summer air is particularly still and humid, I catch a faint whiff of that sickly sweet metallic smell. I've never worked a night shift since, and I never will. I don't know what happened that night. Was it some kind of hallucination brought on by exhaustion and fear? Was it a temporal anomaly? Was I targeted by something unnatural? The last option is the one that truly terrifies me. The memory of that twisted relic and the man's whispered words, the special for the quiet ones, still haunt my dreams. I try not to think about it too much. It's probably best I just forget it, but I figured I'd share it here before that happens. This happened just last year. My name is Sarah. I'm 38 now, a freelance graphic designer, married with a 10-year-old daughter named Lily. We live in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where nothing exciting ever happens, which is exactly how I like it. A couple of years ago, my grandmother passed away. She was an amazing woman, full of life and stories, and she left behind her old Victorian house, a charming but somewhat dilapidated place that had been in our family for generations. It was nestled on a quiet street, surrounded by ancient oak trees, and it had always held a special place in my heart because of all the childhood memories I had there. We decided to keep the house rather than sell it. It was too sentimental. Plus, it had a beautiful sprawling garden that my daughter absolutely adored. We spent most of our weekends there, slowly renovating it, bringing it back to life. My favorite part of the house was the small turreted room on the second floor, which had a wide bay window that overlooked the garden. It was my grandmother's art studio, and the light in there was simply magical. This story takes place during one of those weekends last summer. We had gone down on a Saturday morning, planning to stay until Sunday evening. Lily spent most of the day in the garden, playing with her dolls and collecting wildflowers. My husband Tom was busy in the garage, trying to fix a leaky pipe, and I was in the kitchen, baking a cake with one of my grandmother's old recipes. It was a beautiful, warm evening. Around 8 o'clock, after dinner, Lily was getting ready for bed. I was tucking her in, reading her a bedtime story, when she suddenly stopped me. She had this wide-eyed, uneasy look on her face. "Mommy," she whispered, "I keep hearing something, a scratching sound from under my bed." I paused, then glanced at the floor. "Honey, it's probably just the house settling. It's an old house, remember?" She shook her head, her lower lip trembling slightly. "No, Mommy, it's different. It sounds like something is trying to get out." I sighed, then set the book down and stood up, telling her I'd go check it out. I figured it was just her imagination, or maybe a mouse. The house was old, after all. I told her to stay in bed, and I knelt down, peering into the shadows beneath her antique wooden bed frame. I didn't see anything, and I didn't hear anything either. "See," I said, trying to reassure her. "Nothing there, sweetie." But she still looked worried. "No, wait, Mommy. Listen." She pointed a small finger towards the wall nearest her bed. I crouched down again, pressing my ear to the worn wooden floorboards. At first, I didn't hear anything, just the usual creaks and groans of an old house. But then, after about 15 seconds, I heard it. Faint, but definitely there. A soft, rhythmic scratching sound, just like she had described. It wasn't the quick, frantic scratching of a mouse. It was slower, more deliberate, almost like someone was dragging their fingernail along a rough surface. I frowned, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. It sounded like it was coming from inside the wall, lowered down, closer to the baseboards, just as she'd said. I pulled my ear away, then pressed it back again, trying to pinpoint the exact location. And that's when I heard it. Breathing. Deep, slow, raspy breathing. Not an animal. Definitely not. It was human breathing. I flinched back, a sharp gasp escaping my lips. "Oh my God," I whispered, without even meaning to. And then, I'm not kidding about this, I heard the most chilling, guttural whisper I have ever heard, right from inside the wall, echoing against the floorboards. "You found me." It caught me so off guard that I yelled out again, a feeling of pure primal terror hitting me right in the face. I scrambled backward, bumping into Lily's bed, my eyes wide with horror. "Mommy." "What is it?" Lily cried, her voice trembling. "Get up. Get up now." I grabbed Lily by the arm, practically yanking her out of bed. We stumbled out of the room, my mind racing, trying to process what I had just heard. A human, inside the wall, whispering. "Tom, Tom," I screamed, my voice hoarse, as we ran down the hallway towards the living room, where he was still tinkering with the pipe. As we reached the landing at the top of the stairs, I heard another sound coming from Lily's room, not a whisper this time. A low guttural growl, followed by the unmistakable sound of something heavy scraping against the wall, like furniture being dragged. "What is it? What's going on?" Tom yelled, coming out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a rag, his face confused. "There's someone in the wall," I shrieked, tears streaming down my face, pulling Lily behind me. In Lily's room. Before Tom could even fully process what I was saying, we heard a crash from Lily's room, followed by a splintering sound, and then a figure emerged from the doorway. It was a man, thin and disheveled, covered in layers of grime and dust, his clothes ripped and stained. His eyes were wide and manic, staring directly at us with an unnerving intensity. He had just torn a hole in the wall, revealing a dark, cramped space behind it. He took a step towards us, his lips pulling back into a twisted, horrifying grin. He didn't say anything, but the look in his eyes was pure malice. "Run! Get out!" Tom screamed, pushing us forward towards the front door. I grabbed Lily's hand, and we scrambled down the stairs, fear propelling us forward. I could hear Tom behind us, shouting, confronting the man, trying to buy us time. We burst through the front door, Out into the cool evening air, my lungs burning, my legs aching. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers numb with panic, and dialed 911. We huddled on the front lawn, Lily sobbing into my side. As I tried to explain to the dispatcher what was happening, I could hear shouts from inside the house, then a heavy thud. Tom managed to stop the intruder, grappling with him for a moment, before the man disoriented him with a blow that left him stunned on the floor, then slipped away. My heart was in my throat. Within minutes, the sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder and louder until 2 police cars screeched to a halt in front of our house. Officers, with their flashlights drawn, cautiously entered the house. The rest of the night was a blur. The police found Tom dazed in the hallway, thankfully not seriously injured, just a nasty bump on the head. The intruder was gone. They searched the house from top to bottom, but found no trace of him. However, they did find the gaping hole in Lily's wall, leading to a hidden cavity. It turns out the house had a secret crawl space, a narrow, unused space between the inner and outer walls, which had been sealed off decades ago during a previous renovation. There was an old, disused fireplace chimney that ran through the house, and a small, almost invisible opening had been made at the very bottom, hidden behind a loose floorboard in the pantry. From there, it led into a network of these wall cavities, connecting various rooms. My grandmother, bless her soul, had never mentioned it. The police determined that the man had likely been living in the walls for weeks, possibly months, using the hidden opening to come and go, stealing food and supplies when we weren't there. They believed he had been using the old chimney as a vent system, which explained the faint sounds Lily had heard previously. They never caught him. They checked local homeless shelters, hospitals, even put out a bulletin. But he seemed to have vanished into thin air. The trauma of that night stayed with us for a long time. Lily had nightmares for weeks, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, even in our own suburban home. We immediately hired a crew to completely seal off every possible entry point to those wall cavities, boarding them up, filling them with insulation, making sure no one could ever hide in there again. We also installed a high-tech security system, complete with motion sensors and cameras. We still go to my grandmother's house, but it feels different now. We're constantly checking every nook and cranny, and the innocent joy of spending time there is sometimes overshadowed by the memory of that night. I try to focus on the good times, on my grandmother's legacy, but the image of that man emerging from the wall, his eyes full of hatred, is something I will never forget. It's a constant reminder that sometimes the true horrors aren't in supernatural beings, but in the disturbing depths of human depravity. I haven't told many people the full extent of this story. Most just hear a sanitized version, but I figured I'd share it here, hoping that maybe, just maybe, someone else out there has experienced something similar and can offer some kind of explanation or comfort. My name is Chloe. When I was 17, I grew up in a really remote area, miles away from the nearest town, surrounded by dense forests and winding dirt roads. There was something about the vast, silent wilderness that I always loved. It was a place where you could feel truly free, truly alone, in a good way. Summer nights were always my favorite. The air would be thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, and the sky would be a blanket of a million stars, clearer than anything you'd ever see in the city. The darkness added to that feeling of privacy and freedom, like I had my own little corner of the universe. I had a best friend back then named Liam. He was a year older than me, a little more adventurous, always pushing me to try new things. One warm July night, we decided to go stargazing, just like we always did. It was our ritual. 2 bikes, a blanket, and a thermos of hot chocolate. Even if it was summer, we'd find a spot in the deepest part of the woods, far away from any light pollution, and just lie there, pointing out constellations. This particular night, we wanted to find a new spot. Our old ones were getting a little too familiar. Liam said he knew this perfect place, deeper in the woods than we'd ever gone before, an old logging trail that ended in a clearing where no one ever went. It sounded perfect. It was sometime around 9 o'clock when we left. The sun was just dipping below the tree line, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. We biked for what felt like forever, maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour, down winding trails and over roots. The only sounds the crunch of gravel beneath our tires and the chirping of crickets. We didn't stop until we reached a small, hidden clearing, completely surrounded by towering trees. It was quiet, almost eerily so. The air was still and thick with the smell of damp earth and moss. "This is it," Liam whispered, his voice hushed, as if afraid to break the silence. It was perfect. A wide open space, no discernible landmarks other than the ring of trees, and above us, the endless star-studded sky. We spread out our blanket, poured the hot chocolate into our mugs, and lay back our heads close together, looking up. Our goal on nights like this was always the same: try and spot a shooting star. At one point, Liam asked me if I thought we'd actually see one, and I told him probably not, but to keep looking anyway. They're not as uncommon out here, where you can see so many stars, but you still have to be patient. We talked about everything and nothing: school, our dreams, silly inside jokes. The quiet of the woods was comforting, like a warm embrace. It was the kind of night that made you feel like time didn't exist, like we were the only two people in the entire world. And then it happened. A bright streak of light tore across the black canvas of the sky, a shooting star. We both gasped, then giggled like little kids, a spontaneous burst of pure joy. Liam nudged me. "Make a wish," he whispered. I closed my eyes for a moment, not to fall asleep, just to feel the cool night breeze on my face for a second and settle further into the stillness. I swear on my life, my eyes were not closed for more than 5 seconds, but when I opened them, Liam was gone. Like gone, gone. Not just off to pee or fiddling with his phone. He was actually gone. His bike was still lying on the ground next to mine, the thermos of hot chocolate still sitting on the blanket, but he was nowhere in sight. I sat up fast, a jolt of adrenaline shooting through me. "Liam," I called out, my voice a little shaky. "Liam, are you messing with me?" Silence. Only the faint chirping of crickets answered. I spun around, scanning the darkness, but I couldn't see him anywhere. In that moment, an unexplainable feeling of fear washed over me. The quiet, comforting woods suddenly felt suffocating, and the gentle charm of the night was replaced by a chilling sense of dread. The stars looked dimmer. That's the part I can't forget. The sky was still there, but it felt off, like someone had turned the brightness down or smeared something over it. And the air felt colder too, not like it had cooled naturally, but like I had stepped into a different version of the same place. I know I'm not making any sense, but the feeling was utterly unexplainable. I pulled out my phone to check the time. It was 4 a.m. Exactly. That timestamp is burned into my memory, and probably will be forever. I had to blink a few times to make sure my mind wasn't playing tricks on me. It hadn't even been midnight just a few minutes ago. I kept staring at the time on my phone, wondering if I had somehow fallen asleep. I knew I hadn't, but I couldn't be sure. Would Liam really leave me there all alone, though? Even if I had fallen asleep, there was no way. He wouldn't have done that in a million years. I stood up, spun around, and called his name again, louder this time, my voice echoing eerily in the silent clearing. "Liam, Liam." No answer. I didn't know what to think. The only logical explanation was that he had ditched me for some reason. Maybe he'd gotten annoyed or wandered off and left me passed out, but I couldn't figure out why. We hadn't argued, and the vibe had been good. Really good, honestly. I called his phone a bunch of times too, but those were unanswered as well. After that, I started crying. I mean, can you really blame me? I didn't know what else to do. I grabbed my bike, leaving his behind, and started pedaling back towards my house, trying not to panic. The ride felt like it took forever. It was probably the scariest I'd ever felt on a bike. Every shadow seemed to move. Every rustle in the leaves sounded like footsteps behind me. I didn't stop until I made it back to my driveway, completely out of breath and still not understanding what had just happened. I went to sleep immediately, collapsing into my bed, too exhausted and terrified to even think. The next day, I texted Liam first thing in the morning, expecting an apology, or at least an explanation, but instead, he demanded one from me. He asked me word for word, "Where the hell did you go last night?" I told him what I remembered, how I'd woken up alone at 4 a.m. and assumed he'd left me. But then he hit me with the thing that made me send this story in. He said he was the one who had woken up alone at 4 a.m. and I was the one who was gone. He waited for me for over an hour, calling my name, getting more and more panicked, until he finally biked home, angry and confused, assuming I'd gotten annoyed and left him there. According to him, I just vanished. And I was just as convinced the same thing happened in reverse. We went in circles for a bit, trying to piece it together, but nothing added up. Neither of us had memory gaps beyond that precise moment of waking up alone at 4 a.m. Neither of us had texts or calls or anything that could help reconstruct what actually happened. Even though both of us swore we remembered calling each other after waking up, none of those missed calls were in either of our phone logs. It was like those hours simply didn't exist for either of us. Eventually, we dropped it, or at least we stopped talking about it openly, but I think both of us were far more terrified than we wanted to admit. I know I was. For months, I'd find myself lying in bed, looking out my window at the stars, and remembering that night. Liam and I didn't stargaze much after that night, maybe once or twice, but it was never the same. We were always on edge, always checking on each other, and the magic of those quiet summer nights was gone. In a sense, things did go back to normal between us. We continued living our lives, went to college in different cities, and eventually drifted apart. But even now, I still have no explanation for anything that happened that night. I wouldn't call myself superstitious or a believer in the paranormal, but everyone I tell this story to immediately attributes it to something unnatural. And maybe they're right, but I really don't like thinking about that. I do consider the possibility that Liam simply lied to me, that he panicked and tried to cover it up, but that doesn't explain the missing time or the missing phone logs. Either way, I get a really unsettled feeling, like something happened to us that night that I'll potentially never figure out for as long as I live. The memory lingers, a cold, unsettling whisper in the back of my mind, reminding me that some mysteries are better left unsolved, and I bet my life on the fact that Liam, wherever he is now, still wonders from time to time about what happened to us that summer night in the deep dark woods.